Hey guys, we are living the authentic life with a old and dear and fabulous friend, Jennifer Cope. Welcome. We met 20 plus years ago through your magazine, Houston Modern Luxury, and we were talking about titles. We're going to give you the title Marketing Guru.
Okay. We'll go with that.
And I'm going to say she is one of the original influencers because your entire job or the way you've looked at life has been to connect people and to put good people with other good people. And there's an art to it, and you are living that art.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I'll try to live up to that title for sure.
And Grace Kelly, I guess we have to call her out today. She decided she wanted to sit in on the podcast on Jennifer's lap. So,
well, we're happy to have you joining us today.
She snores really loud, so we'll have to talk over her. Okay, so tell us about, like, when someone goes, what do you do for a living? What's your elevator pitch?
That is always the hardest question for me to answer, quite frankly, because when you're working in publishing in the year 2022, you do everything. So basically, you know, there's what I get paid to do, and then there's what I actually do. So you kind of just do it all, essentially. So my role started, if you want to go way, way back.
Yep, let's go way back.
Let's go way back. So when I started with the magazine 17 years ago, my first title was actually office manager. So we were just talking before. Ground up, very last one on the masthead. If you just called into the magazine, I was the one that picked up the phone. So I was the one that picked it up, took all the messages, hooked up the fax machine, which we still had at that time.
You were a graduate of UT.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and you're office manager. I mean, that happens, guys. Millennials out there, it happens to start as
Gen Z, listen.
Yes, exactly.
And even when I took the position, it was just like, this is it, the starting salary. This is no negotiating whatsoever.
I made $16,000 a year working in advertising.
Wow. Yeah. There you go.
I had to live at home.
Yeah. So it was a very starting salary position, but I've always been a very hard worker, put everything into what I do. And before that, I had worked at Saks Fifth Avenue. And I don't know if you remember from that.
I didn't know that. I read your bio, and I forgot that about you.
So I worked my career path originally started as in retail merchandising, because I graduated from UT in retail merchandising. And
that's the fashion sense.
Well, that's, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so when I went through retail merchandising, they had a required internship period, and I was paired. We did an interview, and I was paired with Saks Houston. So I was still a student at UT in Austin, but I was actually lived my last semester in Houston working at Saks Fifth Avenue.
Wow.
And it was through working at Saks Fifth Avenue that I worked in the PR and fashion office, and I did the retail. And that's when I was like, retail is not for me. I mean, retail is not for me. I mean, we excelled with the department that we had at the time, but I really enjoyed the PR and fashion office the most. And that's Sylvia, who still works there. I worked under her.
Talk about an icon.
Yes.
She's another podcast
well,
guest.
I had no idea.
Host.
Oh, totally. She'd be great. But I had no idea at the time she was as connected as she was. But, I worked really hard, and we worked really great together. And I wanted to stay there full time, but they didn't have a full time position. So I needed to kind of move on and find my way. And she knew I was looking for a job. And that was before the magazine existed.
Oh, wow.
So our first publisher actually came in from out of state, and he's just meeting people. Lo and behold, he meets Sylvia. And he's like, I'm looking for people to launch this magazine. She's like, I have the perfect person. And since I wasn't committed to anything, I started right away, so I was able to kind of get in right away. And it was very much a thrown in on the deep end moment, because it's like, oh, we're having a launch party in a month, and, you will be planning that. And, it was literally like the next month. So it was very quick, and when you start at the very beginning, you don't have any files to reference, you don't have any contacts to go to, you are literally making all of it.
Okay, what keeps coming to mind is The Devil Wears Prada, and Andy working for Meryl Streep and going, how do I accomplish that?
Yeah.
And
you go figure it out.
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Like, you go and you just meet people and you get connected to here and there, and So that was great. And then I moved up into, I did every sponsored event that, every luxury car launch, every, fashion, all the different events that we produced for several years. And so it wasn't until the year, I think, end of 2007, or there was an opening in our advertising department. And in a way, I just needed a new challenge. I was very good at what I did. It was very consuming, though. So when you're working in a marketing position, you
don't clock in and clock out.
Your phone is ringing off the hook. Your emails never have an end
blowing
to them,
up
because people are asking you to do things for them. And so when I moved into advertising, it's almost the other side of the script, because you're asking others to do things for you. So now I'm doing the outbound calls and doing the outbound emails. So it was a very different way to go about it. But
and the support person they hired to help you, was she able to step into your role, or did she leave quickly?
well, that's for another day.
She's not still there. Yeah,
that's for another day. But
because those were big shoes to fill.
Yes. Yeah, so it's hard to step away, right? Because you're there, and so it's constantly,
And it was your baby that you were, and it was the people that you were working for, and you felt a responsibility. But were you able to take them on as your clients, and they wanted to work with you?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I've developed a lot of new clients that I couldn't even imagine at the time, because the reality is now we're moving into 2008, which everybody was like, oh, 2008, the recession, tough year. But actually, for me, I think starting in that time frame and being just pretty naive about all of it, it was a great year for me, and I've only gone up since. So.
And you had a different perspective. That's what I like that you said earlier. It's like there's a description of what you do, but you do it in a different way.
Yeah.
And you almost, I would say, have taken on your clients almost as if you're a PR firm and you're one person.
Yeah. And so I wish I would have brought my notebook today.
Your infamous notebook.
My clients joke about my notebook because I
you're still old school.
Everywhere.
You write down.
I'm old school. I write things down. I have a lot of information thrown at me all day, every day. And so I almost feel like I don't have my head on if I don't have my notebook that I can reference. Even if it's a couple words, I'll remember a sentence or a conversation I had about something. And what's interesting, like I was telling you today, is like tomorrow I could meet someone totally new with interests that I couldn't even fathom right now, and I'll say, Danae will be a perfect contact for you.
Yes.
Or, I'll have the resources to get them where they need to be, if that makes sense. So
yes. And I also feel like I'm fallen into this whole Netflix thing. So I'm going to reference so many different shows on Netflix. On Billions, have you watched that yet? Okay, so one of the characters goes to this Buddhist monk, and she brings him ice cream to show him favor, and he says, you're making this transactional. Think about your life, and everything's transactional. And what I find exceptional about you is I don't find that you're transactional. You have never said to me, because I do this for you, you need to do that for me. But I'm old school also in the way that there's this silly Texas saying that I've said like 25 times this week, you dance with the one that brung you. And I know that if you help me, that I need to help you. And it's this energy that flows back and forth. And I think that's what's been so constant in our 20-year relationship is you are not transactional.
Yes. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to buy anything from me, because I don't want that feeling, right? So I want to make sure people are making a strategic decision that makes sense for their business. That makes sense for their business. So sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I want to be there either way, because I've been here 17 years, so at some point it might make sense for them. So I need to be here.
Exactly. So again, going way back, when I first met you, I had a 22-year career in the construction industry, and we have a marble and granite company, my family, and I was involved with interiors, and we were talking about, you connected me for our first big party at our office with Daniel Ortiz. He had just moved to Houston, amazing photographer. Shout out to Daniel. Yeah. He's another person that could tell so many stories because he's photographing. The more people drink, I'm sure the stories get even better by the end of the night. Definitely. And he's hung out and had cocktails with us at the end. But so interior, there is, people are like, wow, you weren't always in fashion, but they're completely intertwined. Interiors, fashion,
and I actually brought it.
Style,
here.
show
this
us.
Is, this is the new issue of Modern Luxury Interiors Texas. So what's interesting is Houston Magazine, this is the new March issue.
Ooh.
Houston Magazine has been around 17 years. This is actually our 17-year anniversary edition.
Okay.
First issue was in March of 2005, and that's when I did the launch party for Houston Magazine. But it wasn't until 2012, which now 10 years ago, it's our 10-year anniversary, we launched Modern Luxury Interiors Texas. So what's interesting, I mean, just backing up on modern luxury for a minute. So a lot of people don't realize that we're in 22 markets nationwide. So we're in 22 markets with over 85 publications that we produce. So this just represents 2 of those.
The one that says Las Vegas or the Hamptons or...
Yes, Hamptons is super popular.
I love the Hamptons.
So
magazine.
You know, just bringing it all back to what we're talking about, having sort of more of a consulting strategy, I guess you would say. You might say, you know, Jennifer, I'm thinking about opening in Dallas or in New York or Miami or wherever it may be. I have extensions in those other markets too. So we can get strategic and come up with things, not just in Houston, regionally or even in the state, but even out of the state or on a national perspective. So interiors, bringing it back to interiors, celebrating 10 years with this next Volume 2 edition. And it's so funny that we started that's where we met, is actually through our Interiors magazine.
Yeah, it is.
And it really took me, a good chunk of time for me to realize how valuable it is to be well-versed in interiors and in the lifestyle segment. A lot of publications don't offer that. You know, they're either all in on the home design or they're all in on the luxury lifestyle component. And so it's been interesting to see the marrying of the 2 worlds. You know,
I think Town and Country magazine did it from the beginning, kind of in that way. They would showcase people's houses and events and parties and things like that. And I was, when I got my nails done yesterday, I was kind of digging into these things on Instagram. And I'm not a huge Gwyneth Paltrow fan, but I did go to a party where she was in the Hamptons once. Speaking of the Hamptons, but she's redoing her house, and so she's talking a lot about interiors. But here she is, somebody that is known for beauty and for healthcare, and like Hunter Bell, our local darling who came from New York, she's just expanding into interiors and tablescapes, and Lindsay Zurich is doing tablescapes and started in fashion. So I feel like, and all the big brands are doing it. Everybody's doing it, like Gucci and all, and Missoni, and just so many. So it is interesting because the colors and the styles that you see in clothing, you also see changing and evolving in interiors.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'm just starting to notice the events and different things acknowledging that, I guess you'll say. Where, okay, well, here's the trends in home design. Here's how this translates to fashion.
Yes.
And it's so cool. So I love to have kind of a foot in both worlds, if you will. You know, there aren't a lot of people that go to, you know, the ballet ball and then turn around and go to like an ASID, you know, event or something like that. So it's a really neat, what's the word I'm looking for?
Opportunity or crossover.
Yeah, crossover.
And that, okay, so we talked to, I emailed you the overview of the podcast, and I share every week Ikigai with our guest. And Ikigai is when you figure out what you love to do and what you do well, and you're able to make the world a better place for it, and you're able to get paid for it.
Yep.
And I think that such a big part that people don't really understand is they're like, oh, no one's reading print anymore, which that's not true. I still love a magazine. I love to touch it. But you're not a print magazine. You are so much more.
We're a media company. So I mean, digital, there's lots of additional, and we acquired a data company. I mean, there's a lot of additional things that we do outside of print. I mean, but having just 85 titles of print alone is a lot. So there's a lot of opportunity between print, but digital, there's a lot of opportunity there too. So,
and I feel like living the authentic life in our products, people, first thing they say, walk in our store, how do we know it's real? And so I felt like in order to be accepted in the community, I had to legitimize myself.
Yeah.
And part of my ikigai is giving back to the community. So I got really involved in charity things, and then eventually was featured in magazines. And it was interesting that being featured gave me so much it was just like, okay, she's real, she's legit. But then after watching Inventing Anna, have you seen that yet?
Okay, that's on my list. Everyone.
Okay.
I think you were telling me last week, and then
Yeah.
like 2 other people told me.
I mean, it's so good.
Yeah.
And so being around for 17 years, we've seen people come in and go out and come in strong, find their way into the group, and then find out to be a fraud.
Yeah.
So, like, how are you managing all that? Because you're like, oh, you're a new person? How do I not know you? Where have you been? Where'd you come from?
Are you talking about advertisers or just people in like a social
people in general.
It's funny because I think I learned this early on. Almost people that talk the biggest game are the fakest of all. I mean, that's just what I've learned over time. It's usually people that you discover organically, that you really create, the authentic connection with, that you kind of discover their story, if you will. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people have come and gone, but you just have to like hold true to the course. And to your point about being in the magazine, branding is very important. Your brand, is everything. And I mean, social media only exemplified that, having a big brand on social media. But, we call it, it's sort of the funnel, if you will. So you have your branding up at the top, and then you kind of work your way down through to, actively people who are shopping for designer handbags or shopping for jewelry. So
it's so, and I really have enjoyed the opportunity to sort of not just be a picture at a party, but like tell our story and tell our brand, because a big way that I've done that with you is through featuring moms and our journey. And every time we get together, we're talking about being a mom.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is, I mean, we're both blessed to be married and to love our husbands and to have this great opportunity to have a husband and a family. But God, it is so hard. We've been talking about all the events you're planning and all the things you go to, and then you have 2 kids at home and a husband who you actually like and want to spend time with.
Yes, and in fact, before I came here, my husband's like, and I'm sorry, I have to get this. I'm about to. I'm going to be late for this live podcast. Like, I got to go, but I have to get this email out before we do that. And he's talking, so I had to call him on the way here and say,
"Yes,
I'm sorry, I was
babe.
short.
Yes.
Like, we can talk in the car on the way, but I don't want to be late." But motherhood is so huge, and I know we recently connected about that because. I think, and did you go to the Children's Museum event with where they had the book author Permission to Feel?
I didn't.
I'll get you that book after I read it.
Okay, good.
Of course, but it was like, it came in such a perfect time in my life. So the Children's Museum Luncheon, a beautiful event.
It is.
And they had, he's actually a professor. And he wrote this book, Permission to Feel, and it's talking about, he was like, okay,
to feel or
to
fuel?
to feel, like
okay.
feelings. And he was like, okay, I have 30 minutes.
Here I am thinking, type A,
Yeah.
fuel.
We're so the same. I'm a type A.
I'm supposed to feel?
No, exactly.
Do I have time for that?
I know, exactly. I talked to him afterwards, and I was like, you don't know how much I needed this conversation. I said, so his point was, he goes, I have 30 minutes to convince you that feelings are the most important thing in your life, your child's life, everything. And he had talked about how powerful,
I got chills.
How powerful it was for him when he was younger, about 12, where he had an uncle say, how are you feeling? And then he just kind of, it all came out. No one ever asked him how he felt. And it actually made me realize, I don't know if I ask my children how they feel. I make sure they have the food they need. I make sure that they've got what they need for school. They get to practice. But am I asking them how they're feeling? It really just really resonated with me. And going back to our conversation about how busy our lives are, if you're so busy, you're in a way numb to feelings.
Yes.
There's no space for feelings because you're just getting here, getting there, making these appearances, but you don't have any room for feelings. So So that's one of my goals. And every year I usually try to, incorporate a good book into my life, or, read the Bible in a year, or read these letters my grandfather wrote, or like just bring something powerful into your life. And so that's my goal. I'm like, I got that book at the luncheon, and so I've got to read this book and incorporate this into my life.
So I have 4 books I'm taking on spring break. One of them is our Bible study book, Unhitching from the Crazy Train. Because, girl, I am on the crazy train, and I'm holding on to the caboose like flying off the end. Yes. And, but I was doing it on my phone because I could have my phone anywhere, and I could stop and read a few lines. And so I'm actually getting books, and then one is on parenting from a faith standpoint that a friend recommended, and then a couple are about raising a child with chronic pain, because I find that I'm not responding because I'm a fixer, and she just wants to tell me she doesn't feel good. So I'm like, are you breathing? She's like, yes, I'm breathing.
Yeah.
So just to respond with feelings and emotion.
You should read this book. I mean, I'm reading it too, but I mean, Permission to Feel. I mean, I just hung on to every word at this luncheon. And so I'm trying to be more mindful of my kids and their feelings and everything, because it's, I feel like we've kind of coming out of COVID.
Yes.
I feel like we're cramming 2 years into 1 year, and if I feel overwhelmed, think about your kids probably feel overwhelmed. My daughter, it's like just keeping up with her schedule now is just a job within itself.
It's so much. And Bella and I had words last night, and she's just learned to communicate so well. And I'm like, are you still upset with me that I asked you to do the breathing app when you don't like to breathe? And she's like, Mom, I can't even respond to you right now. I've got a text from this person, I have this pressure and my head hurts and I don't feel good. And I was like, God bless her that she could articulate. And she's like, and I don't want to make you upset, but I'm going to cry. And I know next you're going to say you're going to cry. And I'm like, oh my God, you're 14. I'm so happy you could say this, but I'm so heartbroken that this is where you are. So I just stopped and I quit pushing. And she went in to get her shake, and I cried in the car and wiped my tears by the time she got back, and then we go on.
Yeah.
But time for feelings.
Yes. And you have to remove yourself from the fixing and just listen and acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like, tell me, I mean, even my daughter had, like her teacher texted me that she seemed a little like she wasn't paying attention, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on?
But how beautiful the teacher noticed and didn't just think it was set aside, categorically.
Right. So beautiful. It's so important. So important.
Teachers make such a difference. I mean, that's, to me, the hardest part of COVID is that they weren't in school also connecting with other kids. And there's been a disconnect from what I've learned from the dean at Bella's school, is these kids were on their phone, and they're so much more aggressive on what you feel like you could say. And now they're using those same words to each other, to their face, which are just inappropriate and mean. So it's just, it's hard to, there's so many things with that. So getting back to, talking about the phones, talking about social media, you and I were talking the other night, and I said, I'm struggling because I see these algorithms changing, and then I went to lunch with my girlfriends who are influencers. They're like, oh my God, the algorithm. So let's talk about algorithms.
You could tell me about it, because I said to know you're stressing too much about it.
But it's so true. And this girl, our numbers have been going down in the last couple of weeks, and this girl came in yesterday, and she was like, I watch you and I appreciate you. And I said, what do you appreciate about me? Because I'm having a hard week. And she goes, you're positive, and you just make me feel better because you're positive. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. And then a friend of mine I hadn't seen since 1995 at the rodeo. We were on the same rodeo committee. She's like, I watch y'all and laugh. So we need to remember, too, as adults, to show our kids that it's not about the numbers, it's about the connection and what we do with our voice. And so many people aren't using their voices to the best ability.
You mean in a negative way?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, like, the magazine also has digital opportunities. So people, okay, I don't want to advertise here. I'm just on social media. That's where I'm getting all my business. What do you say to that?
I mean, we have social media. We have a
Yes!
robust social media platform for starters. And what's popular right now is where we've been doing boosted out of feed social campaigns. So you
what
can
is
actually,
that?
okay, did I bring my contract for you to sign?
Exactly. I know. Boosted out of feed. That sounds like better numbers. See, look at me. Attaching to the numbers.
Yeah, so we can actually advertise not just to our audience, but to a boosted audience, of course. And then you're coming from the Modern Luxury handle. So you can run from any of our Modern Luxury, either Modern Luxury or Houston Magazine or Interiors or any of the handles. They all have their all separate social media accounts. So, yeah.
And there's so much room for growth, just not for just new companies, but for established companies. It's important to stay within the mix because there's so much noise out there. How do you find that you break through the noise?
Oh boy. Well, that's where I think print is strong, right? Because you want to have your ad next to Gucci. I mean, gosh, Gucci and Louis Vuitton and all the big brands, they still advertise regularly. Everybody knows Gucci, but they're going to still have big ad placement. Look, Dior is on the inside front cover. So
I'm obsessed with Dior right now.
So going back to the branding and legitimizing your business, don't you want your ad next to Dior? Don't you want to have that sort of placement? And then people are kind of connecting the two. Oh wow, the vintage Contessa, it's legitimate, I know that, but there are new people moving to Houston every single day. So, even if you've been saying this message for a long time, there's always new people that haven't heard it. You've done a great job with your branding. I mean, I told you when the Christy Lynn opening and I was trying on, I'm like, okay, wait, who's wearing what, right? Because they need to know.
You don't want to show up in the same thing.
And so of the two I had, it was the dress that you wore. And she's like, oh, the vintage Contessa is wearing that. Oh, no, I can't. I can't wear the same dress. That's yours. You've got to own that for the evening. So
I love that.
So you've done a fantastic job. So keep doing what you're doing. Don't stress about. I mean, the algorithms are designed to drive you crazy, and it seems like it's working.
I loved that. They're designed to drive us crazy. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
I had a great experience. Last week I was at the rodeo, and I saw this friend of mine, Yanni Demir's Barbecue, and I walked over to him and hugged him, and his wife saw me, and I wear the Contessa necklace. She looked at him. She goes, "You're friends with the vintage Contessa?" He's like, "That's Janae."
Yeah.
But it's just funny. And so some of my friends say, I knew her before she was the vintage Contessa. I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny. But I think the other thing is to keep it humble and to also know, like, I'm the one in our family that picks up the dog poop when we go and walk Grace Kelly.
Yeah.
And we're all still doing everything. So you're going in a day to, like, you're leaving here to go to the symphony lunch, and then you're going to go to Target, and you're going to go to the grocery store, and
then I'm going to sell some Girl Scout cookies. So this box is for you. I hope the Thin Mints are your favorite.
Girl, we love a frozen Thin Mint at our house.
So if anyone's interested in Girl Scout cookies, the link is on my social media for my daughter's troop to support their troop. But yeah, the season's wrapping up for Girl Scout cookies. So I kind of joked too, I was at a Girl Scout booth a lot of Saturday. Hustling Girl Scout cookies.
I know. Bella's like, why are you dressed like that at my school? I'm like, because I'm leaving here to go do something else.
I know.
I mean, it's really hard to look like all the other moms and to connect in the same way. Okay, so let's talk about Fresh Faces.
Oh, yeah.
That was an incredible. So how did you come up with the idea? Another incredible collaboration with how many years? Tell us the story.
This is 14 years, I think, in 2020. So we started in 2008. We skipped it in 2020. Or did we have it in? No, I'm confused. Actually, did we have it in? We did have it in 21.
Okay.
So we skipped 2020. It's always in the fall. So we skipped 2020. We had it in 2021. And the feedback I had is that it was the best year ever, which I hold so close to my heart. You don't even know, because coming off of a 2020 year, and also
you're like, are people going to come?
All of your vendors, a lot of people are working with me on an end kind, or it's not. huge budgets, basically. So
Yeah,
you're
repeat
working,
that again, because people think magazines have huge budgets. And
no. So
it's creativity.
So I really, and I joke with our Fresh Faces, I was like, I feel like I was pulling rabbits out of hats, lots of favors, lots of, because we're working with vendors too that came off of their worst year ever.
Right.
Caterers and different people like that. So I'm so thankful for, a fair extraordinaire, which Rachel Voles was one of our past Fresh Faces. So she's really into the program.
I should just get a list of people to have on the podcast through you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a ton of great people. In fact, we switched roles. I interviewed all of them. This year, we actually aired it on social media, but it was a lot of fun to learn about. I mean, they all came from different backgrounds and different stories. And, I really embraced the program more this past year than ever, I have to say, because no drama, everyone truly authentic. Like,
I love
owns their space.
Because fashion girls get a bad rap of being high maintenance.
Oh, not one high maintenance. Not one high maintenance in the whole group. And so this was the first year ever they organized a dinner and invited me to the dinner. And so we went to this dinner and it was beautiful. And we've kind of created this little club.
Synergy, yeah.
And
That's
everybody
so
took
good.
the floor for a minute to tell everyone else about themselves and charities they support and what's important to them. And now we kind of have this text change. Yeah. Like, I'm starting this young professionals group. I love any support, whatever. So now I'm a member of that group, I'm learning about new things that I would have never learned otherwise. And so we're kind of a resource for each other. And I love it. It's such a great group. So it was really nice to have such a strong group this year.
So to that end, I was a woman of substance and a woman of distinction during COVID, so we didn't have either of our events. But we did do a remote viewing, so I took a room. Donna Vallone's a good friend, so I was in Tony's, and we had a TV screen up. And instead of focusing on me, I went around the table, and I told why each person there was meaningful to me and how I met them.
You did that at that lunch we had
with
Agility, and I thought that was so powerful because so many people, I'm sure you've noticed this, they don't even introduce.
No, because
which I find
we
odd.
are in our zone checking or thinking through what's next as opposed to connecting.
Yes. And so I feel like I always really try to do that. Like, oh, this is my friend Danae. Like, here's what you might find interesting or whatever about them.
Yes, make that. And it opened up the most meaningful conversations and created such a connection. And so I think that, and that's another thing that I try to talk about with podcast guests, Blue Zones. So Blue Zones are places around the world where there's an exceptional number of people who live to be over 100. Oh. And 7 of the 9 characteristics in Blue Zones are connection. So some are family, multi-generational, walking, but being in community, taking care of each other. But connection is the way you built your business. And it's really, I feel like when you get an honor, the best part of it is the people that are getting honors with you being in that group. Because it's a little embarrassing. I guess we should all, I just keep thinking we should be humble and not, but to me, that's what I miss the most. It's like, what's an honor if I don't meet all the other women and have a connection with them? To me, that's the greatest part of getting people together and doing it. So I love that. Yeah. Tell us about upcoming things. You have a medical
Yes.
issue.
So thank you
Y'all
for bringing
did a
that up. I
watch
wish I had the
issue?
new. Yes, thank you. I should have brought that copy, or you have it here somewhere. I'm sure we can find one. But so Watches International was new. I think we launched that actually in 2020, which was interesting.
I know.
Of all things.
But people were looking at magazines more than ever that time.
Yeah, so that's a national publication, but then we do carve out 5,000 in the Houston market, specifically looking for watch collectors, that very target audience. But what we have coming up very soon, in a couple weeks, I'll have our first edition of MLMD Texas, Modern Luxury Medicine and Doctors, Texas. And so this is a magazine just for the medical community. So it's all the way down from hospitals to specialists to the latest treatment in this, that, and the other, and a whole magazine dedicated to it. So that will come out in a couple of weeks, and then we're planning to do that annually. We've had that in Atlanta for a few years. It's done really well, and we're launching it in 8 modern luxury markets in March. So, yeah.
Well, we are so blessed to live in a city with such great medical care and so many different opportunities here. And whenever I go through a challenge, I try to find gratitude. So we spent time at Texas Children's yesterday, and I was like, okay, what's my gratitude? I'm at a city that we can get there, I'm close to it, and I'm in a place that I've worked hard so I can pay for it. Because there are a lot of people that struggle to even pay for their medical care. So I think that's a big part of like the lens you look at things.
100%.
And I feel like you're always looking at things in a positive way.
Oh, you
when
have
it's
to.
difficult to find the positive all the time.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, we kind of had a heart-to-heart last week, and your struggles are real. My struggles are real, but sometimes you feel bad complaining, or you don't want to be negative about it.
Because you look at the Ukraine.
Because,
and I'm
there's
like,
so many
I'm
people
complaining?
that are in way worse of a position.
Yes.
Way worse in a position. I couldn't possibly complain about these small things that we have going on in our lives.
Yes.
There's always someone in a worse position. And so you do have to, be grateful and thankful for what you have every single day. You really, truly do. And that's why, again, going back to next week, your text was so sweet. That you were still thinking about me the next day. I mean, that you texted me that you were still thinking about our conversation, and that meant a lot to you. Well, I was thinking the same thing.
Aww.
I was still thinking about our conversation because it meant that much to me. And I feel like our personalities are so similar. Like, we're very driven. We have high expectations for ourselves, so we expect so much from others, and we, type A and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes you have to just
feel.
You have to just feel, and you have to just let go.
Let go and let God.
And maybe I can't be the number one at this, or the number one at whatever it is of the moment, but maybe I'll be the number one making awesome after-school snacks today, because that's what I can handle. And be happy and be okay with it.
Yes. And then the kids are watching what we do more than they're listening to what we hear. When I tell Bella not to push through, but every day I'm pushing through.
I know.
And I tell her to slow down when she hurts, but I don't slow down when I hurt.
Know.
So we have to be so aware of that journey.
Well, and that's what really bothered me also with the working and schooling from home during COVID is that I think to our children, when you have your laptop out, you're working, but to them, you're just ignoring them.
Yes.
And on the computer, they don't see that as work. They don't understand it, especially young children. They don't understand that this is work. This is just mom ignoring me. And so that really, that hurts, So even with my son, who was only 2 and 3, I feel like I'm trying to kind of catch him up on some things, because I feel like he missed a lot during that, because we were just, our lives were too full. With teaching my daughter and doing our jobs, and so 2 years and 1 year, that's what this year is, just
filling it up. So let's talk about one of our shared passions, travel.
Okay.
Are you going for spring break?
So just a really easy Dripping Springs, nothing too crazy this go round. So my daughter is playing softball, which has now consumed a lot of our
your weekend.
A lot of our so I'm like time. Okay. So every single weekend, and there's at least batting cages and practices and games and everything else. So we've got quite a bit on the calendar with that. But I'm happy for her to have that extra. For the athletics and also the social aspect of it too. But
you just recently
lately,
took some trips.
I did a quick Scottsdale trip. Oh gosh, that was was that a year ago?
Oh my
no, I think it was like
time goes. But that's one of my favorite places, so that stuck out of my head.
First time to Nantucket, and it's funny you mentioned that. I had a lot of people comment afterwards. I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have known beforehand. You were such an expert on Nantucket.
Yeah,
so
like
now
where
I feel
to go,
like,
where to book,
now
where to
I feel like
stay.
I can go back, and I've got it all figured out. But we have a magazine in Boston, so I was somewhat connected when I went in there. Didn't go in completely cold. But Palm Beach is my favorite.
Oh, yes.
Palm Beach. That's
And
probably
the clothes there, I just love the style
love
in
it.
Palm Beach.
Love it, love it. So we stayed at the Colony.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Oh my gosh, today.
Is it so me?
Okay, so Rachel Zoe was there when I was there, and we chatted. And in a very natural way, not a fangirl
stalker
moment.
way.
So what's funny is she started talking to my husband. I was just floating around the pool, and she started talking to my husband. And I'm embarrassed to say my husband, because she had her son.
And did he not know who she was?
No, because
of course
he
not.
Asked her how old she was, and and I was like, and later I was like, Kyle, everybody knows that Rachel Zoe has 2 sons. Like, what are you doing? So at least I was like, I think she's convinced that we don't know who she is.
So funny.
So anyway, so that was really neat. But no, the Colony treated us, I mean, I've been telling you, they treated us like kings and queens from the second we landed. I mean, our flight got in, I think, at 11 p.m. I got a text, welcome to Palm Beach. I'm from the concierge. What can I do to help you?
Wow.
Dinners at impossible places to get reservations to.
I love that.
Scheduled in-room massages. I mean, just the list went on and on. I mean,
Incredible.
You must go.
Oh
You
my
must.
God.
Yeah.
So we tend to go places where we have shows.
Okay.
And then, of course, our go-tos are Beaver Creek and Vail.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you have a magazine there?
We're in Aspen.
In Aspen,
And then,
okay.
and then we have Colorado Peak, too.
Okay, good.
Which, that was
Yes.
a rebranded, that was Aspen Peak, and we had 2 Aspen books, so now we have Colorado Peak, and then we have Aspen Magazine.
Oh, got it.
So.
And then Capri, as the Italians say. And I saw Rachel Zoe there, but I did not talk to her.
Oh.
But we were in the restroom together, and I couldn't figure out how to not be a fangirl, so I said nothing.
Oh, no, you said nothing?
Yeah.
Well, what's funny, I started out being very casual, floating by on my, on the float in the pool, because she had the table, right next to them. Like, maybe I could get close or whatever. And then I didn't even notice. She had come around, and she was talking to my husband on the other side of the pool.
Funny.
So she was, in our space at that point. So anyway, it was
You were like, it's
I had
safe.
I had a very real conversation with her. So
I love
I'm an even bigger fangirl now.
I love it. So do you shop when you go for clothes when you travel? Or are you more about, because you're at a fashion event every week. Like we are in Saks Fifth Avenue, Tootsie's. How it's so hard.
Yeah.
And you want to support the charity, and you
do.
want to, and you want to buy
You do.
because you're there. My friend says if you're in a barber shop, you're going to get your hair cut. If you stand around clothes for an hour, you're going to find something you want to buy. How do you choose?
How do you choose? So it's funny you mentioned that. I'm kind of at a point where I'm a bit of an imposter. I've never been a huge label person. I truly haven't. And so when I bought
Where's the
so when I bought this vintage Chanel probably 15 years ago
Probably.
from Danae, me spending this kind of money on this bag was I don't know if you had the impression I did that regularly.
I knew it was special.
Okay, so I was like, yikes, that was a huge amount of money, because I don't know that I had ever spent more than $100 on a bag at that point. And so, but look, here I am 15 years later carrying the same bag. And I made sure, this is going to my daughter. This is going to stay within our family. And I love that. And that's what I love about the jewelry brands too. Trying to think of the watch brand that their ad campaign says you don't ever own. You just take care of it for the next generation. I'm like,
brilliant.
So I want to get my husband a watch, which we'll talk about that too, just so my son will have it. So it'll be like a family heirloom. So I love that.
And the value's going up. If you sold this today, you could get even more for it. They did an analysis on Purse Bob about if you bought a Chanel bag. I think they had 4 price increases in the last year, maybe at 18 months. But the biggest Chanel now is about over $10,000.
Wow.
So they're priced similar, the double flap Maxi, I believe. Forgive me if that's wrong. But they did an analysis of how much it's gone up and how much money you could make. But if you would have invested in Microsoft, it would be that same investment of $2,500 would be $100,000.
Oh wow!
So they're I wouldn't say, but if you're going to buy a bag and wear a bag, and that was my style story. So forever being in the marble and granite business, my dad invested in our business and in property, and we had cars, and he would buy nice jewelry, not fashion. Always shopped at the discount stores. Wouldn't have been able to buy any high brand, but he would go to Italy and he'd bring us back a Gucci bag, and that was my coveted piece. And so I learned to buy meaningful accessories that could upgrade my look.
Love that.
And then this became my side hustle, and then I've been the Vintage Contestant started in 2011, so we're going on, September will be 11 years.
Oh,
yes.
wow. I didn't know you had 10 years last year.
Yes. So, and we didn't really even celebrate it because it was kind of crazy. So,
yeah.
But I think that so many, if people follow, and that's what I really look at when I pick our guests, it's when people follow what they love and do what they love, and they do it so passionately. And it's not about the money, although you want to be successful because you want to provide for your family and go do those trips and stay at the Colony and buy the Chanel bag, but you do it because you love it and you're passionate about hosting events and connecting people and giving back to the community and supporting people that are meaningful to you. And to me, all that is living the authentic life. And you are such a great example of that.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm touched. I mean, you don't even know how thrilled and touched I was that you even asked me to be on here. I mean,
but it's so, people want to know. They want to know about marketing. They want to know about other people's journeys.
Yeah.
And they also really connect when they know that everybody who's successful or made it, I mean, you're a magazine guru, living the life that everybody wants. And it's hard.
You know when
it's work.
You know when it occurred to me so our office used to be at 2700 Post Oak, Post Oak Boulevard, right next to Neiman Marcus. You know, great location. I couldn't say I've always worn all the designer things, but I've always tried to look nice and put together.
Yes.
And I had my brand new Audi, and I was in my 20s.
Yes.
And I pull up in my Audi, I get out of my car, and I'm just, in my own headspace, what I've got to do, walking. And this younger girl stopped me. She said, "Excuse me, what do you do?" She's like, "You look like you just have it all together." And I mean, it was just, I was so touched that this person stopped me. She was like, she wanted to know everything. What'd you major in? Where'd you go to college?
How do I get to become you?
How do I get to
how do I get to this?
It never
occurred to you?
It never, ever, ever occurred to me that anyone would look up to me. Like, never.
Aww.
And I was so touched that she did that. And then, I still think about it to this day. And that was like over 10 years ago, for sure. And, you're always at a point where you kind of aspire to,
next level.
The next or the whatever.
The G3, you want the G5.
But don't forget, there's someone aspiring to be where you are too. And so, I've just really hung on to that moment, and just tried to remember that. So
yes, I love it. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yes,
it's been awesome. People can follow you on Instagram at Jennifer Cope.
At Jennifer Cope _.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, keeping it real. Have a great week. Won't be here for spring break. We'll be in Colorado. So, till then, bye.